Hello, hello. This is another Art Gripe. If you don't know, it's sort of a podcast where I talk about whatever I want to, and I draw something in the background. And sometimes I use that thing to sort of frame what I'm talking about, and sometimes I don't. And sometimes I just talk about the drawing. It just depends on what it is and what I'm feeling at the time. And right now I'm feeling a lot of different things. But this particular drawing is going to be of Caulifla. Who is Caulifla? She's a female Saiyan from Dragonball Super that everyone has a lot of opinions of. I'm probably actually not going to get too much into that today. So if you're looking for a protracted argument fest about whether back tingles are good, then it's probably not going to be this video, but it is something I've talked about in the past. The short form of that is actually in I did a Dragon Ball video called... Actually, I can't remember what it's called. It wasn't the Power Levels or Stupid one. It's the... whatever the second or third one is? I can't remember. But it's the one where I basically just complain about how they did not handle the Universe 6 Saiyans correctly. So you can find out my opinions on that nonsense over there if you give a damn about that stuff. Gart Gripes are usually more about me just talking about what I'm feeling at the time. Or having some sort of talking point like the One Piece anime coming out or something like that. So, I explained that because of my Android 16 video, which actually did much better than my Baldur's Gate 3 video, which was kind of surprising. A lot of people showed up that seemingly did not know that I did Art Gripes, which is the most bizarre thing I think I've ever heard in my career, because Art Gripes are kind of the primary thing I do, it seems like sometimes. But here I am again with an Art Gripe, so if you enjoy listening to my voice, listening to me do this little podcast thing, there you go. And for once I'm actually listening to the background music that I usually put on in the background. It's a little track called Concentration by Kevin MacLeod, I think? Yeah, Kevin MacLeod. Cleod. It's not Cloud, it's like Cleod. And I'm doing that to try to relax myself, because boy howdy, have I had a lot of weird anxiety lately. And I'm not exactly sure if it's medical anxiety or not. It is hard to tell, and that's sort of what I wanted to talk about today. And a lot of you are probably going to be groaning already. Oh god, it's coming one of those. It's not going to be a sad sack thing or anything like that, because weirdly I've been fine lately, and I've been getting a lot of help, I suppose you could say. I guess it's just been a lot of things building up over time, not quite sure. But point being is, my form of anxiety hasn't really been about me worrying about something. It's just been every day I kind of am afraid to go to sleep because I know that I'm probably not going to sleep well. I'm probably going to sleep about 4 hours, and then my body's going to want to try to get up, and I'm not sure why. And whenever I wake up, I have to really struggle to not think about anything at all, whenever you're in that state, and just try to focus to get back to bed. So I will sometimes just lie there, trying my best not to focus on anything, so my brain doesn't have an excuse to activate me, so that I can continue focusing on nothing, and let my thoughts slip away into that state where you are actually dreaming. And that can be difficult to do. And what usually ends up happening is I will sleep, but I'm not really aware of it. I will enter this sort of semi-conscious state where I am aware that I'm trying to sleep, and I think that I'm just sitting there thinking, but actually 3 or so hours have gone by. And then I will actually wake up and I will realize what just happened. And as a result, I will be sort of rested, but not really, and I will feel very, very strange. And as a result, for most of the rest of the day, I will have this sort of very illy defined background anxiety that also mixes with being cold and being tired. So I will feel tired, and I will feel kind of cold, and at the same time I will sort of mix those feelings together so that if I feel too cold, I confuse that with like being depressed or feeling anxious. And then if I warm up, it'll go away sometimes. Or if I'm just tired, which usually I am because of the way that my sleep goes, then I feel that regardless. And because I'm tired throughout the entire day, it just, it just stays there. But I have also had good days where I actually do get sleep, and I will feel that way through about 1/4 of the day. The better the sleep, the better the day. And I will wake up, get through... Right now I'm waking up at very bizarre hours, and this is part of the problem. I wake up at about 5 to 8 o'clock at night, which is terrible, because of a lot of like sleep disorder stuff that I've always... You guys probably know that I have always had sleep disorder stuff. And around midnight to about 2 o'clock in the morning, typically I will like switch back on, and suddenly I will feel fine. In fact, sometimes I'll feel better than fine. I will feel amazing, and I will feel incredibly productive and like upbeat and really happy about the way that things are going and so on. And then I'll sort of like drop down a little bit, and I'll feel a little bit worse. And then it sort of levels out, and then I'm kind of normal or a little bit below normal. And all of that is chemical. Again, it's not rooted in how I'm thinking at all. I just feel that way. And whenever I'm feeling down, I find it extremely difficult to focus or enjoy anything. So what I have been doing lately is as soon as I wake up, I will try to stream on Twitch. Or if I'll get to that. I'll try the stream on Twitch. And I've been watching a lot of slop streams, that is like watching playlist things on YouTube. Because I have a Discord, and on my Discord there's a little channel called Stuff to Watch. And people can submit things that they think would be fun to watch on stream, and I put those in my Watch Later playlist. And then whenever I'm on YouTube, we'll just sit around and watch it, and I'll talk about it and react to it and so on. Not a typical React channel where I'm like soy-facing at the screen or anything like that, but more, if I find it interesting, I'll pause it and we'll sit there and discuss it. That's what I prefer anyways. So we watch a lot of like woodworking videos where people are like slowly making something, or restoration videos. Those are my favorite. Like when someone's taking a very old thing and then making it better over time. Stuff like that. Or, like animation that people have made from a few years ago. I try not to watch anything that's like brand new, because I don't want to take views away from them. And I want people to see these older videos, be aware that they exist, and then go look at them so that it actually, generates more traffic of whoever made it and so on. So that's what we've been doing. And that makes me feel good, because I like sitting there watching videos knowing that I'm watching people enjoy it, and there's like a back and forth and interaction, which has been helpful in a number of ways. Whenever we're not doing that, as soon as the stream ends, we will hop over to Discord, and I will continue to watch things there with everyone throughout the rest of the night, whether I'm doing something or not in the background. So we've gone through and we've watched like Owl House and Gargoyles and Big O and the Batman animated series and things like that. And we have a little list of things that we can watch and so on. I find that to be pretty fun sometimes. And that's kind of the part of the problem. I'm not really... Because this is all like chemical, I'm not exactly stable about it. And it interweaves with some of my consistent problems that I've had, as far as like my development and personality and so on. And this is part of what I wanted to discuss about it. I'm trying to be open about the nature of how I think, because I think it can help you guys identify things about yourselves as well. For example, when watching stream, doing Twitch, I notice that if I'm watching something and I'm enjoying it, and then I look over and I like say something, and then chat isn't really moving at all, like no one responds to it, it makes me feel as though I'm doing a bad job. Because there's no engagement going on. Even if the chat slows down sometimes, that will generate that same feeling, which usually is completely irrational, because there's plenty of people in there, and most of the time people are in there just to ambiently listen to something while they're working or playing and so on. It's obviously not their responsibility to chat, but it's nice. For example, I was in a Twitch chat actually right before starting this recording, and that was someone that had 2,500 people watching at that very moment. And their chat was barely moving at all. Because they specifically, they don't really talk to their chat much. So as a result, not many people are actually actively chatting there. They're just listening. Or, just driving and listening in their car or whatever it is. So there's not really a correlation between talking and whether people are actually enjoying themselves or not. And rationally, I know that. And even whenever I'm having those thoughts, like my brain is having those thoughts, then I'm telling my brain that makes no sense, that is completely irrational. But my brain doesn't care. The thoughts are almost automatic. If you've ever had the sensation of having a thought that you don't have, it's just something that appears in your head, not like a traditional invasive thought, but something of that nature, then that's what I'm talking about. And I think that I have thoughts like that because I have this need for approval and like acceptance and to know that I'm doing a good job and things like that. And I think a lot of that stems from my upbringing. Like the way that I was raised was I was a third child and I was not expected, so I was kind of just, forgotten for the most part. So as a result, I spent a lot of time just sort of being forgotten and placed in the background of my own family. My brothers were the ones that were made to work around the farm and so on. So even though I'm the farmer kid, as you guys probably know online, I never actually did much farming because nothing was really expected of me. I was just kind of given a broom most of the time and told, go stand over there and sweep. Because it was just something, it was a way to get rid of me, effectively. I was not really friends with my brothers. They wanted nothing to do with me. I did not really have many friends because we lived out in the middle of nowhere, and I was typically not really allowed to visit anyone in my school. And because of my upbringing, I was not very particularly stable in the first place. I was very argumentative, and I knew that something was kind of off about my family and the way that I was being raised because I wasn't really being shown any love or affection. This is not like a sob thing again. I'm just trying to explain, because, I'm 41? Yeah, 41 years old now. So this is all like a old hat for me. But I was not raised ever being told, that I was loved. I didn't even hear that come out of my parents' mouth until last year, actually this year. And source, I was never hugged, just that sort of profile. That sort of profile of the kind of person you get. That's the reason why I'm an artist, after all. So you can see, this is what I'm getting at. You can see where that need for approval and so on came from, and where that insecurity came from. You can see why I became an artist. Because I just was not getting what I needed to become a more stable, well-rounded person early on. It's why, if you've been following me for a long time, watching the YouTube channel, you can see how I've grown as a person alongside my videos. I started very insecure and awkward and probably more argumentative and things like that. And over time, I leveled out, and now I'm, what you see before you now. And a little bit more stable, I would like to think, and a little bit more well-rounded and so on. But point being, the things that created me are still there. They will always be there in some fashion or another. So, those things, whenever I'm down, whether it's because of, unhealthy thoughts, or in my case, it might have been some sort of new strain of COVID for all I know. I have no idea. Because supposedly, there's something going around that actually causes something similar to this. So it could be that I was afflicted with something. Although this began with a very uncomfortable conversation that I was not ready to have, which set off a lot of these feelings. But even after I realized, oh, it wasn't actually a big deal after all, and I kind of leveled out and realized, oh, it's fine, it's actually fine, everything is fine. The thoughts still didn't go away, even though I knew at that point that they were completely irrational. But part of that is also just because that's how like anxiety and depression works. It's an actual chemical reaction that's happening in your brain, and it kind of causes a disease in that way, and whenever you have it, then you just have to like try to get your brain to produce what it needs every day correctly every day. Like you need to stabilize. It's like healing from an injury, effectively. And as long as you have that injury, because we are like walking bags of chemicals, we're still going to have those thoughts, even though in our heads, we know this makes no sense. So it's just kind of there, But this is what I'm getting at. If you've ever seen those... I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. This drawing of Caulifla, I really had to force myself to do. Because I wanted to do something. I needed to feel like I was working. Even whenever I was watching things on Discord. Because I hadn't streamed in a couple days on Twitch. And I figured, well, I can probably try to draw something for an art gripe. Even though I really wanted to write something and do like an anime-related video, because I promised to do that. And no, I'm not that concerned or worried about that aspect of things, if that's what you're thinking. Even though I needed that, it was very difficult to get started. Because whenever I'm having like those feelings, even though I'm not really having unhealthy thoughts, I find it extremely difficult to enjoy anything. If I look at like my library of games, here in the middle of the night, it's like we're watching something over Discord. Not too many people are talking. There's quite a few people in there, though. Everyone's kind of just watching, doing their own thing, which is fine. I will still find myself just like sitting there, just feeling this sort of background anxiety that's coming from nowhere, and looking at a list of like games I could play in the background, and I don't want to play any of them. There's not a single one of them that excites me. And sometimes I'll launch some anyways and just try to putter around some, and I find that that actually makes things worse. And even the physical action of like doing things in the game ends up making me feel worse. And the same thing is true of drawing. Here, this is what I was trying to say, excuse me. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. But those test drawings where they give artists like drugs or show them going through like Alzheimer's or something. And it actually shows the physical degradation of their skills as an artist. Whether that's the result of, drugs or it's whether they're having a medical condition or not. And I've talked about this in the past. Sometimes you just wake up and you can't draw that day. With this Caulifla drawing, I was trying to force myself to do this to produce some sort of work. And no matter what I did, you could see it at the start whenever I was doing my sketches, like everything was coming out wrong. And part of that is that I'm just not particularly good at drawing Dragonball style. But a lot of it also is just the fact that my brain was just not in the state where I could process imagery correctly. And you can actually see how much I struggle because I spent a lot of time trying to just really get the anatomy correct, and I just couldn't quite do it. And I feel like this drawing eventually ends up being, it's fine. I'm sure a lot of you, by your own personal standards of enjoyment and so on, the old, 2 cakes, I love 2 cakes, that thing. By your standards, this is all fine, but my own standards, I can definitely tell that something was wrong. The drawing ends up being fine, but, whatever. So a lot of this is just chemical. Some of it is thoughts, some of it is like real life things that I can't quite avoid. But a lot of it is chemical. And I was finding tonight, like that sensation was just not going away. And by the way, I was trying to figure out what exactly was wrong with the drawing. And I kept looking at actual Dragon Ball images and realized it's probably the nose. It's the nose. Because I'm trying to do this up shot. And even in actual like Dragon Ball episodes, whenever they draw like Goku, when you're like looking up and you can see like the undercarriage of his nose, it looks super weird. It never looks right. It's just a limitation of the Dragon Ball style, so choosing to drawn in this position was not a good idea in the first place. So it takes me a while to fix the face. And I think even if I was feeling Jim Dandy, then it still would not... it would not have turned out particularly well. Yes, what the hell was I talking about? But yeah, in the process of trying to do this, I was just not feeling it. It was primarily chemical, and I have found that there's been several things that helped me. A big one is the sensation that I'm working. And this is true of a lot of people that recover from, like, even if my anxiety / it doesn't really feel exactly like depression most of the time. I don't think it is, but it could be, I guess, like some sort of medically defined depression. Most people that recover from it do say that, like, a lot of it comes down to a feeling of control and agency. So feeling like I'm doing something, accomplishing something helps a lot, even if it's something small. Also, I've been trying to avoid anything that's like a negative sensation, which is why I've been being awake in the middle of the night is not great, because one, I don't have access to D3, because, no sunlight, I'm not getting exposed to anything, there's no real interaction because it's the middle of the night, no one's doing anything, so I'm just sitting there typically alone, without people to chat with. I would otherwise just be sitting there alone, knowing there's no one around, there's no one to talk to, nothing's going on. It's sort of that sensation of being trapped with no resort as far as like input goes. And the only thing left to do would be work. And if you're not really in the state to work, then you end up accomplishing nothing, and it becomes like a recursive problem where it just keeps contributing to itself over and over again, and it's really difficult to get out of it. So for you guys, if you are like feeling your own forms of anxiety and stuff, you sort of have to recognize what the patterns are and what is contributing to it, recognize the kind of help that you require, and then do your best to access those things, which sometimes is easier said than done, but that is how you do it. And here, if you're getting tired of me wildly flipping, is because I'm desperately trying to fix this face. So I identified, one, I need access to people. I need to feel like I am sort of near people and I am supported. And not everyone has this. This is one of the things I'm most thankful for. I'm thankful that I can work on my own. It does contribute some problems. If you work on your own, then you are on your own. You don't run into people every day. You're not going to make new friends, because you're not going to meet anyone. That's part of that problem. But at the same time, you also don't have to worry about, I need to go into work today, even though I'm, severely depressed, or I'm sick, or so on. My girlfriend has been struggling a bit with a type of flu, and she's having to go back to work today, actually. And even though she's not like 100%, she still has to go. And I definitely remember that feeling, because I had that a lot going through all my jobs, through whole of high school, all of college, while working line, then going back to college, and so on. And that, coupled with my weird sleep disorder things that I get sometimes, not a great combination. So I definitely appreciate that. Another is that I'm an online personality, so baked in, I'm going to have a lot of people that if I go on Twitter and say, I'm not feeling great, could you guys come support me? There will be people that show up. And I love you guys for that. I will never not be extremely appreciative for that. It's not as though, like, recently I saw a post on Reddit of, it's a guy I don't recognize, but he was a content creator, and he died recently. And they didn't specify how, but I took that to mean what it probably meant. And you might be able to figure out who it is, and I guess you can talk about it if you want to. But I was just thinking, it is very hard to be a content creator in this respect, because you are isolated, you're doing all these things online, but you're not actually having physical connections with people, and that's incredibly important. But that guy, I was thinking, he apparently, other people were talking about it that knew him. It's like, oh yeah, he struggled with alcohol and trying to treat things with substances, and he would have long stretches where he would disengage from his audience and so on. But even the people in the comments were saying, oh, he lived near me. I didn't know. If only I'd known, maybe I could have helped him. Which, that's not your responsibility, but I understand the sentiment, certainly. Lots of people were showing their support, and I'm sure he got lots of comments, and this is usually the case with these sorts of cases. They'll get lots of supportive comments, but it's not the same thing, because those are just nebulous comments from people that you don't actually know. Understand what the difference between those things are. Like getting random comments of support from sort of just names on a sheet of paper, in a sense, is not the same thing as getting actual substantive help from people that you have known for your entire life, that consider you friends and so on. Especially if you have this strong associative problem of, say, having a deep insecurity about not having family members, for example. Like, say you're similar to me in some fashion, or you're adopted, or you had a parent walk out on your family when you were younger, or something of that nature. Then a lot of things can stem back to not having something familial. So it doesn't matter how many friends you have, even. And it certainly wouldn't matter how many online support, how many online names are on a list telling you that you're doing a good job or whatever. It can still just loop back into, well, that's fine, but family is the big thing for me. And, that's how a lot of people get together, romantically even, is they have some sort of core value that's really important to them because of the way that they developed whenever they were younger, and it just loops back into whatever that need is. Sorry I'm rambling here, but my mind's been going very fast lately. But I was thinking about this. But usually, a lot of, in therapy, they discourage you from this idea of, like, you need a partner to be happy, or, like, recently I saw some dating thing that showed, like, a scientific study of, this is supposedly what works and doesn't work in dating. And it showed there is no way to actually predict who will end up together, but it does show that if you date primarily based on attractiveness or wealth or height or whatever, all those things always fail. None of them ever predict to actually having a happy, successful, long-term relationship. Nothing can predict what will, but there are lots of things that just don't work. But we're still wired that way. And that process of, like, needing support, that's the thing that actually drives us to reproduce in the long run as well. And I was just thinking about that, just how human beings are sort of wired to feel this way in a sense. And a lot of who we are goes back to trying to rectify the insecurities that we have as a result of how we developed whenever we were younger. And therapists often try to discourage this idea of, well, you need to be happy on your own. Even in relationships, you need to be happy before you get into a relationship, because it's one of the key indicators of whether that relationship will succeed. If you get into it and you're using that person to try to kind of fix yourself or make yourself happy in some way, then it's probably not going to work out, because whatever the underlying issues were with you are still there. You're just not addressing them. No one can fix you in that regard. And but we're still wired that way. This was so interesting to me. Is we all need friends, we all need some form of family, even if it's found family. We all need something that's important to us. And for all the therapists and so on, they're like, well, you don't need all these things to be happy and so on. But, well, okay. What if I took you, a happy person, Mr. Therapist, I took away your loved ones, like your children, your spouse, your family. I took away all these things and put you inside of a room and made you a content creator where you're forced to try to struggle against the algorithm and all this other stuff. How happy would you be? How about it? When it comes down to it, a lot of happiness does come down to having those things in a sense. But I definitely understand the underlying notion that you need to try to be happy by finding your own agency and being happy on your own and so on. So I'm not saying that it's like, I'm certainly not saying it's hopeless or anything like that. Just that the method of repair of yourself is something that is always an ongoing process that has a lot of different sources. And for me, some of those sources are knowing that I'm doing a good job, because those are my vulnerabilities. And whenever I'm most vulnerable, that's what I need. I need to know that I'm doing a good job. I need to know that people are nearby. I need to feel like if we're watching something and I picked it out, then if people are like laughing at it and having a good time, they're like, good, I chose well, like I did a good job. Here we have final image. It ended up being fine. It is certainly not my finest work, but I was just desperately trying to struggle to get through it, and I was kind of going through the motions. And you can tell on one of those little Alzheimer charts, this would be like a 3. It is not a 10, thankfully, but it's a 3. Yeah. Just everyone needs to be able to find the things that they need. And for me, it is like having some sort of feedback, but also working. Being able to feel like I'm doing something. And the more kind of small jobs that I could find for myself, the better I felt. And in concert with that, I found that taking omega-3 and D3, and I need to get some B9, like there's things that are known to like treat things like anxiety to some degree at least, help a lot as well. You have to be conscientious of the fact that all this stuff is not necessarily linked back to your thoughts. Sometimes it is just purely chemical. And in my case, I feel like it is, in this case. And in addition to all that, I was just like taking multivitamins, iron, like just all the stuff that I had just lying around. So like, give me it, just shove it in me. And there were some days where I felt like, well, I didn't feel like eating all day, and I finally ate, and then I felt better. And some of it was just like, I just needed something. There's something in my system that was missing, and that's what it was. It was just one little piece, and that's all it was. And I guess that's really what I'm trying to get at here, is that lately, sure, I've been having like some struggles, but a lot of it just comes down to just like this. It's the slow work. It is the slow, kind of grueling work of identifying what your needs are medically and psychologically, finding those things and supplementing yourself until you get to the point where you are healthy again. So it's not as though you are powerless. That's kind of what I'm after here. I'm trying to establish this. For you guys, in your own personal healing, and we all go through personal healing, a lot of it is introspective and also openness. Like, for example, this is therapeutic for me. One of the reasons why I write, why I record things, why I do art gripes, is because I'm trying to learn in some way. I'm like, the reason why I'm like rambling and this is not scripted is because you're actually listening to me being introspective. This is how I think. And typically I don't do it out loud, but as they say, if you say it, you get it out of yourself. And that's part of healing as well, is being able to openly say things out loud in such a way that you are voicing them and like looking them in the face in a sense. And that's important as well, which is typically why it's important to also have a confidant that's not going to judge you. That is also extremely important. But that's what I've been going through lately. Sorry, I didn't talk about Caulifla from Dragonball. I'm sure that was very important to you. The gist of it is that Super is fine. The back tingle thing was stupid, but I understand what they're going for. And as far as like Caulifla, her character as well, I actually considered the idea of, because I was sitting here thinking I'm going to talk about the anxiety thing. There's no way around it. That's absolutely what I'm going to drift into, because I was thinking, well, I could just talk about Dragon Ball. I'm not going to talk about Dragon Ball. But I was thinking, well, her whole thing is she's young and kind of stupid and following her impulses and kind of realizing her ambitions. I was trying to figure out some sort of recharacterization thing where I could kind of loop things back into it, sort of like what I was trying to do with the Android 16 video. But sometimes you just gotta throw that away and just own up to it. This is sort of a throwaway drawing. The excuse is to listen to me podcast. So I hope that this has been helpful to you in some degree. I tried to make sure that it sounded at least moderately hopeful. Because sometimes whenever you talk about these things, I do fear someone listening to it and going, oh, he's right, it is hopeless, or something like that. And that's definitely not the message I'm going for. And I certainly do not feel that bad at all. But a lot of people do feel that bad. And because I remember feeling that bad. And that's definitely what I'm wanting to treat. More than anything else, I desperately want to try to help you guys. I care a lot about the way that you guys develop and feel, because that's what I went through. And Robin Williams, because he hurt so much inside, this is the thing I always think about, because he hurt so much inside, he wanted to make the world laugh. A lot of comedians are like that. And whenever they leave stage, they drop because the high is gone and so on. I feel like human beings are just like that. The things that are the most important to them are the things that they project outside of themselves, which is why so much evil sometimes is in the world, because so many people are obsessed with control, because a lot of things loop back to control, which is something else I've been thinking about a lot. Because in treating depression, a lot of it comes back to that feeling of control and agency, and when it comes to even people behaving wickedly, it often comes back to they don't understand the world around them, and they feel like they need to control it in order to make sense of things. My father was like that. He tried to... that's how I got the way that I was, because he was a very, very controlling man. Because he was just afraid of the things around him, and that was his way of trying to settle the world and make sense of it, to control it. So a lot of human beings, a lot of the way that we just act and behave just comes back to that. Just that feeling of needing to have agency and control, and to not, like, it's the desire to not be afraid, in a sense, is what drives a lot of us. Whenever I look at characters, or even, I don't get to write characters too often anymore, but whenever I think about it, I often find that a lot of it does come back to this feeling of characters are thinking about how they can control the world around them through their own agency. Because that's how you write characters. They have to have some sort of motivating factor that loops into how they view the world and what their goals are. Why are they doing the things that they're doing? Usually because they have some motivating fear or desire, and that's how they view the entire world around them. But anyways, I'm getting way too out there at this point. Point being, hope you enjoyed my shitty drawing that I was drawing when I was maybe sick. I'm not quite sure. But that's kind of the point. You never quite know. You just have to make sure that you're in an ongoing state of constantly making yourself better. And a lot of it comes down to control and little tiny things that you're doing to try to treat yourself, support and validation, and so on. Be aware, seek out, be aggressive about seeking out what you need in order to be happy. Because when it comes down to it, that is what life is. I've joked before that life is a series of meals, because a lot of us are just like, oh, I can't wait to eat. And that's the simplest form of that. Life is a series of meals, except in this case it's sort of psychological meals. You're moving from one to the next. Just treat yourselves well, seek out help, think well of yourself, and take control of your own fate and so on. All that good stuff. Hopefully that made some degree of sense. It's kind of hard for me to tell right now, because I'm still kind of out of it. But I will recover. I'll get better eventually when my chemicals actually start getting produced correctly, whatever the devil's wrong with my body. And we'll see then. So I will try to get back to work at some point, but for the time being, I'm mainly just trying to heal. As we all should be. Right. But I will see you guys next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.